Hello, everybody, and good afternoon from where I am in Dublin, in Ireland, and welcome to the third in our series of ECR community webinars on category management yesterday, today, and tomorrow, as we review category management practices around the world. My name is Declan Carolyn, and I am co-chair of ECR community, and I'm really excited by the reaction and feedback we've had on the first two webinars, and I'm really looking forward to today. The focus today is very much on retailers. All three of our case study presentations consider category management from the retailer's perspective, and as such, there will be much to learn for retailers, but there'll also be a lot to learn for suppliers. And I've always believed that suppliers should understand a little more about what happens from the retailer's perspective to improve their effectiveness in category planning. So today's a big opportunity for us to get down and dirty with the retailers, to get to understand what category management means for them. And as we're featuring retailers, we'll hear more about macro space planning, about implementation and execution, effective communication, new category introduction, and overall store planning. Brian and Luke will continue their critique of the category management process, and this week we'll consider shopper missions and updating the 8-step approach. I'm delighted to be joined by Julian Plotz from Hoffrogge, one of the main sponsors of the review, and we'll discuss what it is like to work with a retailer and a supplier on a collaborative, wide-scale category rollout. Musgrave's our leading retailer in Ireland, and Paul Corcoran is Range and Space Planning Manager with them. Paul will discuss the strategy and methodology behind implementing a completely new category in their stores. And then it will be my pleasure to welcome my co-chair in ECR community, Birgit Schroeder from ECR Germany. And Birgit will present their approach to total store optimization. And after all the presentations, I'll hold a Q&A session, so please feel free to submit your questions during the webinar as we progress, and we can ask our panelists all to join us for the Q&A session afterwards. As you're all aware, our series of webinars have focused on the ECR community review of category management released in November, which many of you have downloaded at this stage. We scheduled 3 webinars to allow us to present some of the case studies included in the review from Canada, China, France, Germany, Italy, and Ireland. And today is the third in the series, which leads us to consider what's next. Well, our intention is to continue developing the ECR Catman network. We are certainly going to schedule additional webinars and present some of the other case studies, perhaps expand our case study library, consider training sessions or additional learning opportunities for basic and advanced practitioners around the world. So I would really welcome your feedback on this, and you all should receive a very short 2-minute survey at the end of the webinar, giving you the opportunity to have your say on what we should do next. Instrumental in the production of the review and so passionate about the category management process in all of our webinars to date have been Brian and Luke. Great if you can join us, Brian, Luke. Hi guys, really great to have you with us again today. Just a quick question before we kick off. How have you found the webinar series to date, and where do you think we should go with this ECR Catman network?
Well, I think, when we started this, Declan, I think we all felt that category management was certainly alive and well. Little did we know the global extent of continuing interest in category management. So, I mean, to have the report downloaded, I think in 65 countries, I think you said, several thousand people, that just reaffirmed, I think, to all of us on the committee that, the global interest level is still incredibly high. And what we need to do, and we can see that through the webinars. I mean, to have, 400 plus people sign up for every webinar, that's extremely impressive, and it just makes the point that we have to keep this going. Now, as you say, we have a number of other cases we haven't presented, which absolutely deserve to be presented, so we should continue to present cases. I think we need to talk, obviously, about how we begin to train people in how they go from whatever level they're at today, be it basic or advanced. How do we help them continue to raise the level of their capability. So some kind of training that we need to develop the right kind of training approach around the world that will capitalize on the momentum that we see through the, through this project. So it's been extremely impressive. Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, Brian, and hello everybody. I really agree with you. I was very pleased with the quality of the cases. And I always learned that innovation already exists somewhere in the world. And having started this project, Declan and Birgit, was really great, because we see that whatever we're talking about the future, it exists somehow already in one or another country, on one or another category, and one or another retailer. And so it's a great community, and I think we've been able to reach out, I believe, to more than 40 or 50 countries. And for me, that's an enormous success. So the next step is clearly to go to what some ECR countries do, like Germany and France, is update some of the practices, start trainings on all that, and create capability for so many companies around the world that really have to engage for the future and to win there.
Okay, all right. Look, great to hear, to get your feedback, guys. And your passion for category management, it's infectious. And it's really motivated all of us to keep understanding the academia and the process and the reason why it all works. It's been a privilege listening to you guys, and looking forward to hearing you again today. So Brian, over to you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Declan. Talk about passion. It is interesting that 30 years later, we still have the passion, and why not? It's been a fantastic ride. We've seen so much success come from it around the world. We've seen so many people really base their whole career on category management. Somebody asked me some time ago, how many people around the world do you think have a job that is either directly related to category management or supports category management? And I had no idea. I took a wild guess and I said like 50,000. Well, there was a survey done by somebody that said it's well over 100,000. So, when you think about it, the degree of penetration of this technique and method around the world in companies, retailers, manufacturers has been absolutely fantastic. So I think, the fact that here we are 30 years later, and hopefully we've convinced all of you that category management has a continuing role to play in the success of our companies. That's critical, because there's very few things in our industry, if you think about it, that last 30 years. Many techniques come and go. They come for a few years, they disappear, they get replaced. It's so intriguing to me, and I know Luke, here we are 30 years later, and category management is still a center stage process that's adapted well to the changes over the time. So I think the passion comes from just simply the pleasure of having seen how successful and how much category management contributes to, the ongoing success of many, many companies around the world. So thank you, all of you, as practitioners. We appreciate your continued support and use of these methods. Okay, so today, as Declan said, we're going to focus a little bit more on the retail side. And we really want to share with you some of the key ways that retailers, or some of the key things that retailers need to do to win today. And you'll see in the title, there's a couple of key words: consumer shopper segment, and this whole idea of segmentation, of focusing on different segments of consumers and shoppers is really a critical dimension, an underlying success factor for how category management needs to be conducted today. And then relevant shopping missions. I mean, the whole idea is, how can category management direct success towards the right shopper missions, given the strategies of the retailers and manufacturers? Which shopper missions are most relevant today, given the consumers, given the consumer segments that are now beginning to dominate the purchasing power within our market? So I think that's the focus of today's webinar. Declan, how do I move on to the next slide, please?
Yep, if you just click on the presentation there to get control, you should be able to move it along.
Okay, got it. Okay, there we go. All right, I wanted just initially to, before we share a few of the new thoughts, so to speak, just a quick recap of some of the key things that have tied together the project and the last two seminars. This has been our kind of roadmap. It's been our roadmap for 30 years, actually. And the point we've made in every meeting is the fact that category management played a critical role in the evolution of retail marketing. It was the process by which we initially brought the consumer into retail marketing decisions, and that became a very important platform for the evolution and the addition and the evolution of new techniques, new methods were added to that base. And today, as you know, we've gone through from the consumer focus to a shopper focus, and now we're really on the step of an integrated consumer and shopper focus. So category management really was a critical stepping stone in the evolution of retail marketing. Next. Declan. Okay, so as you know, we titled the report category management yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and we broke that into like 3 phases because we felt in these 3 phases you really had the key defining elements that made category management what it was in those particular eras. In the first era, you know, when it was originally launched back in the late 80s until 2010, that was really the period where we developed the techniques to bring the consumer into retail marketing. And of course, you know, there was the focus at that point was to develop a simple 8-step process for doing category management with retailers and manufacturers in a simple way, manage the categories of business with strategies and tactics that actually made sense for that business within the context of either the brands that the manufacturer manages or the categories that the retailer manages. And there were some significant elements to that. Category definitions were reviewed and changed. Consumer decision trees were used to think about how we structure the category and more around how the consumer makes decisions. Category roles came into the equation. We never had that before. They create differentiation for how we decide to allocate resources from one category to another. Category scorecards provided accountability. Category strategies linked and drove category tactics. Now, the focus in that period was still very much on kind of cleaning up the low-hanging fruit opportunities because we saw once we started to think about the category from a consumer point of view, there was a lot of low-hanging fruit opportunities that could be captured, and the new process proved that was absolutely the case, and the results were spectacular. Now, obviously, what drove it was this, and we'll come back to this later because this is still the centerpiece of category management, how we think about managing a category as a business. Now, obviously, we have to update it, adjust it, adapt it to the realities of today, and Luke and I will share some thoughts about how we might want to do that. The next phase, which is category management today, 2010, 2020, this obviously, as we all know, was really the time where the shopper came into retail marketing. And clearly there was a number of reasons for that because we had new value drivers. You know, what consumers were looking for in the products they consume, in the way they shop was driven by different value drivers. The old days of price and quality became expanded into things like ecology, sustainability, health consciousness. So those new value drivers on the consumption side and the shopper side really had to be brought into whatever model of consumer and shopper marketing that we followed. There was a new generation of consumers. Millennials took over the buying power in the market. And they were different. What they were looking for in products they consumed and how they shopped was really different. And as we all know, obviously we needed to incorporate the omni-channel perspective, the concept of which channel wins which shopper missions. I mean, that whole expansion of multi-channel marketing and behavior had to be factored into the models of category management and brand marketing. Now, of course, the key tool we developed to help us think about this was this integrated idea of a consumer and shopper journey. You know, the consumer becomes a shopper and ultimately returns back to being a consumer and evaluates that whole process. So the whole idea of an integrated consumer and shopper model journey was absolutely critical to understanding and to incorporating the traditional consumer point of view of category management and integrating into that a shopper behavior, a shopper expectation perspective. And that was a very important methodology for achieving that. In addition to that, clearly, you know, some way of thinking about how we did this, and this came from the Consumer Shopper Journey Report as well, because, you know, essentially what we came to understand clearly was that there's certain information and insights that then drive how this work is done. Segmentation was critical. The consumer and shopper journey insights, understanding at each step of that journey, you know, how the consumer, what their behavior was, how did that convert to shopper behavior? That became critical inputs. The centerpiece obviously was then to integrate this into a strategic framework, and it had to be collaborative. So the whole idea of really understanding how these data absolutely provided the fuel for executing the right kind of strategies and for aligning the strategies between retailers and manufacturers, that became absolutely the critical starting point for then how we went into the third component, which is really where category management fits: category business planning, shopper marketing, joint business planning. You know, so this was kind of the overall umbrella under which we integrated category management, but we did it in the context of these new insights around the consumer shopper journey, and we connected it to the strategies and the alignment of strategies between retailers and manufacturers. It's very interesting. We had a conversation with Birgit about GS1 Germany's work. You know, they are reviewing the 8-step process, and one of the critical things that they believe needs to be put into that process is the whole idea of strategic alignment, and we agree with that. So the whole idea of making sure that it's a collaborative process driven by strategic alignment from the very beginning becomes critical. Okay, now the next area obviously is you know, kind of where we think we're at today, which is the integration of consumer and shopper marketing. And, you know, clearly, as I said before, it's a logical step in the evolution of this, because we've gone through the consumer phase, we've integrated the shopper, and now the next question is, how then do we come up with business processes that integrate these two fundamental things: brand management and consumer marketing. And of course, as Luke and I have been saying, and as the report highlights, we have to do this with an integrated consumer shopper approach, which takes retailer and manufacturer collaboration to a higher level. The goal is, and this is critical, the goal is to increase brand equity both for the retailer and the manufacturer. One of the things I've been a bit concerned about in some of the more recent papers I read on category management is this whole idea of maybe it's moving away from a more collaborative approach, that the retailer is doing more of it themselves, the whole shopper centricity idea. But in the end, as it started, this has to be built around a collaborative process, and the goal of that has to be joint brand equity development and growth. And category management then, you know, provides the innovation and differentiation for how we grow categories and develop categories in this context of joint brand equity development. Now, again, you know, the consumer shopper journey gives us a roadmap, because it basically says we start off with who is the consumer segment that we absolutely want to focus on, and how does that segment then navigate that journey, and how do we add value by understanding the expectations and the behavior at each of these steps. The main focus then becomes more on shopper segments and consumer segments, store-by-store application, as we'll hear in the presentation from about REWE and Hoffrogge a little later in the meeting. Category management then is the vehicle to create differentiation by delivering these cross-category solutions and shopper experiences to the appropriate segments that we want to focus on, and then structuring the work to deliver a shopper mission expectations for the right consumers and shoppers. Shopper missions then become the key for how we think about our category roles. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then the growth of e-commerce clearly gives us a whole new range of strategies and tactics for communicating with, for touch pointing the appropriate consumers and shoppers. The overall idea then is to leverage the value to the maximum extent of consumer shopper insights, deploy these insights in an omni-channel structure, and then incorporate the consumer and shopper journey as a roadmap to understand consumer and shopper needs across the different channels. And the overall model, and I won't go through this again because we've shown you before, the idea is that we need a structured approach, a set of steps, just like the 8 steps, that we can logically go through the manufacturer and then the retailer to integrate the whole idea of brand equity co-development. And this is the approach that we believe drives that in a logical way. So when you think about the last 30 years, right, the 8-step model was really the starting point. The consumer shopper journey became the way that we then broaden that model out from the consumer to the consumer and shopper. And now the 9-step collaborative brand equity model is how then we take both of these processes and integrate it into this broader collaborative process through which we co-build and develop brand equity for both the retailer and the manufacturer. So it's been an interesting set of steps, each of these periods. The 8-step was the category management, the starting point. When the shopper came in, the consumer shopper journey became the platform, the framework, and more recently then the joint brand equity development model now integrates both of those in an approach then to have the retailer and manufacturer collaborate to build joint brand equity. So what I want to then just talk about for a couple of minutes is, when you think about it, the 8-step model is still the centerpiece because that's the logic of how we manage any category in the context of the total store, how we manage a category in the context of our brands if we're a manufacturer. What I think we need to think about is how then do we incorporate into the 8-step model some of these newer ideas. And I'll just give you a couple of examples. Like in category definition, we've made a point in the last webinar about, we have to think about category definition in a different context. We've got to think about it in the context of the value drivers that is shaping the consumption and shopper needs of categories. And what does that mean with respect to how we think about it? Think about a category. Where does that category fit in the overall universe of consumption? Where does it fit into the shopping experience expectation? So we can't just think now of the category as a set of products. We have to think of the category in this. We have to integrate into that category the whole idea of category vision. Where's the future of that category? Where are the growth platforms within that category? Where are the biggest opportunities to drive the category to that next level of its development? So, the whole idea of integrating category vision into the category definition step becomes critical and a way of taking it to the next level. Again, in the last webinar, Luke spoke about how then do we develop category vision, and I won't go into detail, but essentially there's a logical set of steps, set of considerations that go into building the category vision. The point we're trying to make is that category definition now becomes based upon the whole idea of what's the vision for that category, okay? What are the main drivers of future development and growth of the category? What parts of the category are growing faster given the kind of shoppers and given the kind of expectations that are now driving that category vision? The same with category role. I mean, category role becomes still a very critical step in the process, but now we need to think of it a little bit differently, because in the context of a consumer and shopper integrated idea, you know, the category role becomes has to be connected to the shopper mission. So once we understand who the target consumer and shopper is for our work, what are their missions, the category role then becomes the vehicle by which that category becomes the driver of that shopper mission. So we need to put the category role in the context of how do we differentiate and win the category mission by having the right role for the category. So again, we can take the traditional view of the category role, destination, routine, etc., but now we need to connect it more closely into the whole idea of a shopper mission. Category assessment, the same kind of idea. Now we have a roadmap to say that if we're going to assess the opportunities to grow a category, we have to do it in the context of a shopper mission, firstly, okay? We have to do it in the context of a category vision, and where are the biggest opportunities for growth? What segments of consumers and shoppers? What category missions, or what shopping missions are going to be critical for driving the category in the future? So again, the category assessment step gets broadened out, gets expanded to accommodate these new elements that need to come into it when we understand the need to integrate consumer and shopper behavior. And then same with scorecard and strategies. I mean, clearly we need to integrate into the 8 steps a broader set of scorecards that really capture the ability of the category to capture its potential against the right segments and in a broad way. So the whole idea of expanded KPI sets that allow us to not just simply think of the category as a single business, but by segment, by shopper mission becomes kind of critical. And then of course, lastly, strategies. I mean, strategies really come out of you know, how we connect. If you go back to category vision and category assessment, you know, which strategies are required to create and deliver against the expectations of those category and shopper segments. And again, we showed you this before. This is the integration then. This is where strategies come from, because if we have consumer needs and we know that consumer needs are structured by lifestyles and also by spending power, once we understand that and we segment the market that way, we can then start to say what strategies are going to then drive each of those segments, and particularly our target segments. What strategies of price, experience, of quality, of assortment, what strategies and then tactics are going to then best allow us to deliver that for that segment, the kinds of shopper experiences and expectations that they are looking for in the shopper mission, in their dominant shopper mission. So the point I want to make here, just to conclude, is that the 8-step is still the centerpiece of the category management process. What we've done, I think, in the report and in our webinars is we've expanded the 8 steps to be able to accommodate some of the new thinking, some of the thinking that comes from the absolute requirement to think of the consumer and shopper in a more integrated way. So I think, Luke, I'm going to hand over to you just to make a few other statements relevant to where do we go from here.
All right, yes. So, you know, building on that chart.
Just give you control here now, Luke. And look, great if you can just skim through them if possible, because we're just a bit over time. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. So I think starting from this chart, Brian, I think on the left side, the universe of consumption and the segments that we find, old generation versus new generation, the subconscious, the conscious, the attitudes, price sensitivities, And that connects to the shopper journey expectations for each one of those segments. And this comes to the other part, the key question for this webinar is, at the end of the day, in a collaborative mode, a retailer has to win the mission versus his competition. And there are two elements in there, is understanding what is that consumer shopper that makes 80% of his sales. What are her consumption platforms, her demand spaces? And for these demand spaces, she is actually looking for solutions that the retailer can offer, and where the role of the category has a differentiating element. So a shopper says, this is my preferred store because of three things. First, this retailer understands what I want to consume. Secondly, he is the best in the category that drives that solution. And third, the shopping experience is the best. And so these three elements make a retailer win the mission for the 20-30% of consumer shoppers that drive his growth in the future. And that's where his loyalty has to be built on, and his recruiting strategy. So these three elements drive the mission. And that is also where a manufacturer has to look at for his brand. Where do I connect with these three elements in my strategy? And so from there, obviously, I would say, to all manufacturers, as one recommendation is, think about, what are the demand spaces from these target consumers that will generate most of the growth, based on the value drivers, the motivations, and the user occasions, the who, the what, the why, the where, and the when as a consumer. How can I plot this into the consumer shopper journey when I collaborate with a retailer? And a second element is that in our experience, doing that journey work and these insights, we have to step away from these mass marketing pricing strategies, the battles of price, because the layers of price quality in these segments are very different. And it's really all about building a price perception that connects with your level, your layer of quality and the price that you want to pay and the experience that you're looking for. It's people thinking about sometimes buying a Mont Blanc versus a BIC, or buying a Mercedes versus a Skoda. And that differentiation starts with the buildup of a strategy of pre, during, and post price perception, with all the tactics that belong to loyalty card, price communication, etc. So these are two key recommendations that will let you win and make a difference versus competition in the past. Very quickly, some key recommendations for retailers. For me, very clear, and I think this has been said again and again, understand the value drivers for those consumer shoppers that make 80% of your sales. Understand the demand spaces and create cross-category solutions, and understand which categories that make the difference. Build intelligence so that you move from mass marketing to mass customization, up to one-to-one and artificial intelligence 5 to 10 years. But start now, because that's important. And connected with that is, a multi-source data intelligence. Start to think holistic in all the information you have and connect it to each other, connect the dots. And based on that, you should see, cross-functionally within your company, store operations, marketing, merchandising, it all goes through the lens of the segments, the demand spaces, the solutions that you offer, and the experience around the journey. That's really the connecting structure. And of course, a lot of that information about the demand spaces can come from the manufacturer, and that's where the collaboration is really a key point. I think for the manufacturers, the message is very clear. Build a category vision along the value drivers. Think about communication strategies together with the retailer along the journey, and develop, in that sense, new collaborative levels, so that your brand strategies can connect with a retailer to help win the mission. That is, for me, really very, very important to go from there. So Declan, I hand over back to you.
Luke, thanks so much. Brian, thanks so much. Look, nice comment coming in from Karen, who you might know. I know Karen from before. And Brian, she takes a disagreement with your figure that we may have only be 100,000 people involved in category management. Karen herself has trained 7,500. So we think it's a multiple time of that, but Karen's delighted to see we're still going strong, and many companies are only starting to see this merge strongly with customer marketing, which is a course through, you know. And a couple of comments from Antonella and from Rudolph about where we go next. So maybe we might talk to them about them when we get to the Q&A section. So thanks, Brian and Luke, once again. Look, as you know, we divided all the cases in the review into 6 different focus areas, and we're going to show presentations from 2 of those focus areas. Musgrave are going to be in the area where we had 3 submissions in the review on integrating category management into the broader consumer and shopper journey framework. And then Hoffrogge are going to present a case they did with REWE and Coca-Cola, which, you know, obviously is about joint brand building collaboration between retailers and manufacturers. And then we'll finish off with a presentation from Birgit, where many retailers and manufacturers are now thinking beyond pure category optimization and can thus increase shoppers' satisfaction and realize growth potential. We'll get an initial overview of this trend from Birgit in ECR, Germany. So I am going to pass over to Julian Plotz from Hoffrogge. Julian, delighted that you're with us here today. I'm just allowing you to share your screen. You've gone away from us there, Julian. We've dialed you back in. How are you, Julian?
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody.
I love your Zoom.
Zoom in a bit. Hi, Declan. Thanks for the introduction. All right. Good afternoon, good morning to the ECR community. My name is Julian and I'm calling in from Germany today, representing the CM project team of REWE, a leading German FMCG retailer that you might know, and Coca-Cola European Partners. It's a pleasure for me to represent the project team today and show up in this event, giving up a best practice presentation for the German country. And as you see here on the slide, the title of our presentation for today is dedicated to the store individual optimization of a beverage store for the retailer REWE on a big scale. The first thing I would like to emphasize in this collaboration is the long-standing cooperation that it is. We have just seen the carrier steps on the ladder of Luke and Brian's evolution of the category management process, and I think this project actually became a process a couple of years ago because we are working together quite closely with the partners ever since 2013. So we are now in the 8th year of the cooperation, and this is one of the quality criteria we can apply on the first site for this project. In the center of the whole CM project is the REWE beverage store and the store individual optimization of the category tactics, space, range, and shelf. The project partners that I want to highlight here are Coca-Cola European Partners, who are bringing into this process market research data for the respective alcoholic, non-alcoholic beverages categories, as well as category and shopper insights that we are benefiting from in this category management process. They also assist the local execution on site with their expertise, having optimized hundreds and thousands of stores in the category of soft drinks in different retailer projects. Our role as Hoffrogge is to provide the enabling technology for facilitating the CM optimization. We are bringing in specialized software tools fully integrated for the optimization of range and shelf on each store, and also data processing workflows to be able to take the right decision on the right SKU. We also bring in some category management services and have optimized together more than 1,100 stores in this process. Of course, we are reliant on the execution on site, so this project does not end at the planogram when we send out the final handouts, but it is a continuous process, and local execution is one of the main important aspects that I want to emphasize today. Before I get a little bit deeper into the category tactics, I would like to point out the long-term process that we are having here. You may have seen in the publication that we are following an 8 steps workflow, basically in this category management process. It all starts with the initial data integration, referring market research data and local POS scanning data onto a stable item master database for the respective categories that we want to optimize. We then go on the space optimization, implementing the current status quo of the REWE stores, where we want to reflect the shelf structure and how they are allocated to each other in a bird perspective of the department. We are calculating the right share and deciding on the right allocation of the categories in the right sequence of the shop, which is done in the store maker. Once the software knows the right space share for each category, it then assigns the right assortment that we have decided on in the joint team in the workshop together, and then calculates the perfect tailor-made assortment for each site, having in mind the local POS data and the local top-selling items. In the shelf maker, we are creating the planograms based on a rule set that I'm going to highlight later on the slides. And then, as I said, it doesn't end with the local execution, but it is actually a continuous process that needs to be monitored over time, and we need to reflect optimizations from year to year. In a nutshell, you can say that REWE as a retailer is taking the final decision for every guideline that we need for the creation of the content. We are having joint assortment workshops together, and every project team member is bringing in their insights and their experience based on the projects that we did and the years we had over time. However, REWE is taking the final decision on the assortment and the placement guidelines, and Coca-Cola European Partners and ourselves, we provide the consulting and technology to then execute the content on a store scale. As we don't have so much time today, I would like to focus on the category tactics and give you a little impression on the space, range, and shelf optimization that we are doing together with our partners. If you imagine the three category tactics that I pointed out before, you can say that it's like a magic rectangle that we have experienced in many projects over the years. The magic rectangle consists of space, range, and shelf optimization. And at this point, it's necessary to say that all three variables are directly related to each other. You cannot look at one of the variables separately, because if one takes a decision on the space plan, for example, it will have a direct impact on the other two components of the magic rectangle at the same time. So it really helps if you have a software infrastructure and data processing processes that are helping the expert users in category management to take the right decisions in the tool. Let's imagine the latest category trend is soft drinks, where we had an increasing market share for less sugar lemonade and cola drinks over the last years. Coca-Cola Zero, or let's say Fanta Zero as a lemonade, have grown a bit over the last years because the consumer are demanding more or less sugar-reduced beverages. If the one who is taking the decisions on the space plan on the bird perspective would assign one or two shelf modules more to the subcategory of less sugar drinks, then the one who is taking this decision on the range or the shelf planogram will be directly affected by that shelf target plan that has been done before. So you cannot really separate the issue, but you need to reflect those in a separate solution. However, it really helps the team if all software tools are speaking to the same web service and having a direct interrelation as well. Let's take a closer look at the three tactics that I pointed out before. It first of all starts with the capturing of the status quo. If we receive a request for optimization of a REWE store, and it's fair to say that over the years the interest in the project results have grown very, very much. So at the moment, the REWE stores are requesting their optimizations proactively on a digital form. When we have assigned the store for the optimization, we are capturing the shelf structure and the way they are allocated to each other in the beverage department. The status quo is reflecting not only the shelf structures, but also the shares that have been there before the optimization. For the optimization of the space plan, we take into account two different aspects. The first one is the space allocation key that is considering volume and value share in the local POS data, as well as a market research trend as a benchmark factor. We add the allocation of the segments of the category according to the shopper insights and the category decision tree in the respective categories. And in StoreMaker 2, we combine the two worlds of facts and figures and the visibility in a rule set so that we can then produce a target plan that has been optimized by the category management team on the press of a button, and then having the expert users of the category management team apply a finishing touch on the final result to then share it with the local site. Once we have decided for the shares of the categories and the allocation to each other in the shop context, we can then go into the range process, which is a two-step process in this in this project. In the first step, we are having a joint workshop together where REWE is taking the final decision, and all category managers are bringing in their objectives for the different non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverage categories. At this point, we use a rangefinder tool and decide on the perfect assortment, having in mind the market coverage for the right items, and also the different frequent shelf sizes we need to reflect in the project and the content. Innovations and strategic listings that are promoting trends like the less sugar example that I pointed out before will be reflected in the strategic assortment and then customized per site by the range adapter. It is an algorithm that is taking into account the local POS data, adding up local hero items which are selling very well at one specific store, whereas in the group of stores it has been like an item in the midfield performers. On the other hand, the tool is removing the local loser items, which are performing very, not so well at the specific site, to then get some free space for the local adjustments. The tool is not only adding up items and removing those that are not relevant for the range strategy, but also adjusting the front facings to avoid out of stock based on the weekly rotation that the items have, what we can drag out from the scanning data for each site. When we have calculated the perfect tailored assortment for each REWE store, we are then focused on the planogram creation. And for this workflow step, we use the shelf maker tool that is taking in 4 different aspects to be considered. The first one is the target space plan that has been done before, what we have seen in the store maker. The second input that is flowing in is the calculated assortment that is taking out the best of both worlds, local data and market research trends. The third input that is coming in is the shopper insights and item data of the category to reflect a tailor-made, perfectly fitting shelf proposal. As you have seen in the review, we have been performing optimizations in more than 1,000 stores over the last years. This is of course only possible if the software is helping the users to create optimizations on an automated process. And for this, we use a rule set in the shelf maker that I just want to point out for you in a short video. So at this point, I would like to go into the shelf maker and play a little video for you. I'm not sure if you're going to hear the music, but I'm going to give a little comment on that so that you can follow the presentation. So here you can see the target plan and the way the soft drinks are supposed to be placed in the new shop context of this REWE store. On the right-hand side, you see the right shares. On the left-hand side, you see the allocation of each category in the beverage sector. Down below, you see the calculated assortment involving the right SKUs and facing for this store based on the local rotation. On the left-hand side of the shelf maker, you see the other inputs flowing in, shopper insights and item data, as well as a rule set that is now applied, placing all items in the right sequencing based on the shelf and store vision that we have agreed on, REWE taking the final decision, as I said before. This way we can produce a handout for each store individually and then send it out for the optimization. As you may imagine, the automation on the rule set is really helping the whole team to create a lot of planograms fitting to each store individually. Here on the map of Germany, we have pointed out the stores that we have optimized ever since the project started in 2013. A lot of stores represented on this map have now received their 7th or 8th update over time, so they are still requesting assortment and shelf placement recommendations from our team. Last but not least, I would like to highlight the execution of the process. Here we have a short video for you to see a local on-site conversion of a planogram. Even if the video is now not really up to date, but from the beginning of the project, it's still very valid and will show you how it's done when the different players at the POS are working together. As I've pointed out before, we focus on each store individually. The shelf structure and the local assortment based on the POS data are two winning success factors for the local execution. Sales representatives of Coca-Cola are helping to execute the handouts. The REWE store team is, of course, also helping during the implementation. Thanks to modern technology and digital devices, we have the planogram now available on a tablet solution and can even react to local changes that are just coming up when you're implementing the planogram at the store level. Here you can see the department responsible person at REWE working together with the different category advisors here for soft drinks to rebuild the shelves. A clear shelf vision and a clear store vision is very important and a winning factor for this project. Sometimes it's even the better solution to remove some assortment and create a clear vision and create some space for the top selling items to avoid out of stocks. Clear shopper path, clear orientation, anchor brands are a couple of aspects to be mentioned here. So even if the assortment status was from 2014, we can still say that the execution is one of the most important pillars of the whole process and is one of the winning factors of our team. At this point, I would like to say thank you for spending the time and would be grateful if you would ask a couple of questions, provide some feedback, as it's quite hard to not see any feedback on a visual basis when you're doing the presentation. But thank you for digging into this publication, and I'm happy to answer.
Hi, Julian. Thanks so much. We're going to take questions at the end, if that's okay. We're going to move on to the other presentations, and then we'll get everybody back to join a panel for Q&A at the end. So we'll talk to you in about 15-20 minutes or so.
All right. Thank you very much, Declan.
Thanks. See you then. Hi, Paul. Are you there?
Declan, how are you? How are things?
I'm doing great, thanks. Sure, it's a lovely sunny day in Ireland.
It is a nice run into St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, so let's hope the sun shines.
Listen, I've given you control, so away you go. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, all. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you one of our case studies that we submitted to the recent publication. So I'm just briefly going to explain who Musgrave are. So Musgrave is a 140-year-old sixth-generation family business. And as a family-owned business, we work with thousands of other family businesses and their local communities in Ireland, Northern Ireland, and indeed Spain. So Musgrave, who we are a retail, wholesale, food service and food export business. And we actually feed 1 in 3 people across the island of Ireland every day. We are Ireland's largest private sector employer with over 41,000 employees. We work with more than 1,000 independent retail partners across the island of Ireland. And it's our purpose is growing good business, creating a sustainable, profitable business that benefits our shareholders, our people, our partners, their local communities, and the wider Irish economy. So our Musgrave brands on the island of Ireland, so sitting under the retail business unit, we operate the SuperValu brands, Centra, Daybreak, Mace, Donnybrook Fair, and our coffee brand, Frank and Honest. And then across our wholesale food service division, we operate Marketplace, LaRousse Foods and Drinks. And then our international division trades under Del Prix, Del Sur, and recently formed Musgrave Export Business Unit. So to put this into context for you, so the Musgrave Group turnover, Musgrave sales 3.9 billion and equates to retail sales of 5.3 billion. And then across our brands, and the 2 brands that I would operate across would be SuperValu operating at 2.9 billion per annum and Centra at 1.8 billion per annum. And that would be the core anchor to the Musgrave portfolio of brands. So we are a wholesale division operating across these brands. So a number of years ago, the outcome of the commercial plan for the division that I work in was to introduce a destination health category in all SuperValu stores. And the graph on the right helps put the SuperValu estate in stores into context. So the overall Musgrave ambition is to grow good business. For us to grow good and prosper, we need to be able to offer the independent retailers that we supply a model which allows them to make sustainable return on their investment by operating our brands. So the challenge that was presented to me and my team was to find the appropriate amount of space in all SuperValu stores to accommodate a new on-trend health range, which we refer to now as being health and wellness. So whilst ensuring the optimal consumer shopping experience while maximising the return of retail space, and in doing so ensuring that the best return per metre sales and margin is provided to our retailers. So the approach that we took, so we started with developing the ideal format layout to include the best location in store to position this new health and wellness category. So we analysed the space performance using euro return per linear metre to determine the existing category winners and loser by store. So we independently audited all our SuperValu stores to determine the existing category space and to establish the actual store layout. So very similar to the approach to what Julian would have taken. We then rebalanced the space of underperforming categories as much as possible, yet retaining the breadth of range, i.e. the key lines, and retained as much sales as possible. So on the back of a trial, our trial results were analysed to determine the sales performance, KPIs including rate of sale of product, euro sales and margin return per bay. And throughout this approach and throughout this process, engagement with our retailers and region managers was critical for the success of this launch of a new category and new department in their stores. So the outcome was that we found between 7 to 30 bays of health and wellness, and it's now live in all of our stores. And to put this into context for you, the two images clearly show that this wasn't just an ordinary department that was dropped into the middle of stores using standard grocery shelving. We brought it to life using a different look and feel, and the look and feel included clinically white shelving, new flooring, different type of lighting that would be found traditionally in a traditional supermarket. So it was setting a point of difference. So our ambition for 2021, so SuperValu will be the absolute leader in health and wellness in the Irish grocery and compete versus our health stores in the categories of free from, benefit foods and nuts, seeds, dry fruit. We will lead the market through our store within a store health and wellness zone with the largest breadth of range that is always on trend. Comprehensive core range that allows us to compete against the multiples and the discounters that also trade on the island of Ireland. We will stay ahead of the health trends by being first to market, and we will commit to ensuring that our ranges are refreshed with a launch of a new planogram twice a year with up to 10% range change. So to date, from time of launch to where we finished, where we are today, we have now established sales performance with retail sales value of 46.6 million. We finished 2020 with sales growth of 24%, and indeed through these difficult times in COVID where people are trying to eat healthily, we're seeing a 27% growth in sales. In the short number of years that we've been trading with this department, we have also developed and grown an own brand sales offer for the consumer, and this range of own brand SKUs is now worth 8.1 million, and this represents 17% sales participation within the category. And our share of trade within this sector, within the sector in Ireland, is now worth 34%. And interestingly, our online sales participation has grown to 7.55%, with sales increase of 4.8%. So what's been critical to sustaining these numbers and growing these numbers is strong is strong implementation. So when the recommended plan is fully implemented, we've demonstrated that we see sales growth of an additional €2,500 per week, and this represents 35%. So working on plan to address underperforming stores has been one of our key objectives, and the health and wellness zone rollout to be reset with a robust plan as part of the SuperValu brand rejuvenation with 4-quad support this year. So in the graph to the right of the slide demonstrates one of our trial stores where we went in and we fully implemented the range that's recommended for the store, and the spike in sales has been phenomenal, and this is now going to be shared with our independent retailers and regional managers to support the relaunch of this category as we launch the new planograms. So thank you for listening, and we'll be happy to take any questions or further discussion when all the presentations are wrapped up. So back over to you, Declan, and thank you again.
Oh, thanks a million, and congratulations. Plenty of similarities between your case in Musgrave's and Julian's case that he worked with REWE and Coca-Cola in terms of finding space for a category in store, and leads us on very well to our final presentation today. We'll come back and join us after Birgit's presentation if you can, Paul, and we'll just have a quick chat. But let me move over to Birgit now. And I'm going to attempt to make presenter. And Birgit's final presentation today is going to look at total store optimization, the next level of category management. And Birgit's just putting up her screen there. Away you go, Birgit.
Can you see it, Declan? Can you see it?
Yes, see it fine.
Okay. Then. Okay, so hello to you all. I hope I have a stable connection now. I had some issues, but I think now it works. So glad to have you with us today. My name is Birgit, and I'm responsible for the shopper experience business at GS1 Germany. So let's have a view on total store optimization together today. Only a top line view, I think, but a first view. So in Germany, we have the situation that almost all FMCG retailers are intensively working on category management, and some of them are now also focusing on the total store approach, and we think that this is a future topic for all retailers. And at GS1 Germany, we are also heavily focused on this holistic concept and have conducted a total store study together with the GfK 2 years ago with a lot of results and interesting get-outs. And I would like to take a very top-line view with you on the total store topic during the next few minutes. So, as you all know, the goal of category management is to optimize a single category, like for example, the spirits you can see here from the shopper's point of view. And to realize growth potential, the assortment, the placement, the promotion, and sometimes also the pricing may need to be optimized. So what's the difference to the total store approach? The total store approach is about considers the entire store and optimizes it from the shopper's point of view also. And the approach is that if a category shines alone, that brings relatively little. You generate an uplift for the category, sometimes a cross-category uplift, but very seldom an uplift for all the categories in the store. And the total store concept is much more about a successful appearance of the entire store. In this concept, the retailer's medium to long-term strategy has a far stronger influence than it is the case with the category approach. So in our team at GS1 Germany, we like to compare the total store approach with a picture of an orchestra. The conductor is the retailer, the musicians are the 10 dimensions of the total store concept. The customer is the audience, and the customer expects a perfect composition. and therefore each musician must perform at the highest level and play flawlessly. Then the total result counts and leads to customer excitement and applause in the concert as well as during the shopping trip. So what are the targets of the total store approach? You have to know that a total store concept or project is a monumental project for the retailer in terms of resources, investment, time, and much more. But the result can be great if you do it the right way. And so the total store optimization goals are: you want to differentiate from your main competitors, you want to become the favorite store for your target shoppers, you want to generate a huge shopping experience for your customers, and you want to win new customers and shoppers for the store. And you have a loyalty, but you want to form the highest loyalty among your established shoppers. So we work with 10 dimensions at the total store approach, or in the total store approach, or 10 building blocks, you can say. And they all take part in making the shopping experience as perfect as possible for the shopper. So some dimensions relate to the macro level, some to the micro level of the store. So please don't understand the order of the dimension as a ranking. The 10 dimensions are the location of the store, which means the environment and the catchment area of the store. The image store, that means how is the store perceived, also in contrast to the competition. The choice of the store, so why does a shopper choose the store or not? The products and assortment, so which ranges and products should be listed. It's about the shopper flow. It's about category adjacency, so what are optimal category connections and what is the cross-selling potential about. It's about the placement, the store design, also about service and staff. When we analyzed the results of our total store study, we were very surprised to see how extremely important staff and service are for the customer satisfaction. And last but not least, the entrance zone. So what should be offered in the entrance zone? It is the first and the last impression, the prepayment and post-payment zone. So what is about the connection of category management and the total store approach? The category management is a very important part of the total store approach. So as you can see here, category management with the products and assortment, the category adjacencies, and the placement has to be done. Yeah, without these fundamentals, the retailer will not be successful, even with the most amazing and modern store design. So to get into the whole dimensions, we can't do it with the 10 dimensions. So let's have a look at 2 of the 10 dimensions, the shopper flow and the store design. First of all, to the shopper flow, and what do you have to do as retailer? You have to identify the hotspots and the cold spots in the store. This means the highly frequented and the low frequented areas. You have to arrange the categories strategically and in product group words. You should find and implement an intelligent allocation of the planned purchase categories with products for daily needs, for example, to guide the shopper through the entire store. And you must ensure for the impulse purchase categories the highest visibility and frequency in the store. So for example, the sweets need much more visibility as the dairy products. And last but not least, you should avoid very long aisles. Long aisles cause drop of shoppers' attention, and then they won't buy. And then a second dimension is the store design. So the overall impression of the store counts. It is very important that the store design is authentic and fits to the image of the retailer. So a discount store is not a temple of luxury, you should remember, and you don't have to show a temple of luxury when you are a discounter. You have to ensure the best possible orientation for the shopper, so the retailer should use signs, instructions, and pictures to help the shopper finding his way through the store. And today the customers want to shop and not to purchase. So the retailers have to provide a shopping experience and a feel-good atmosphere. And there must be no compromise on hygiene, and not just since the pandemic. It was the same before. So I can't see this here. It's over my Jeff Bezos said it, on the point. He said, we see our customers as invited guests to a party, and we are the hosts. It's our job every day to make every important aspect of the customer experience a little bit better. And that's what the total store approach is about. So I hope I could give you a first impression and whet your appetite a little bit for the total store approach. And I think there's so much potential for the retailers. So let's get it. Thank you so much.
Birgit, thank you so much. And look, I totally get where staff and service can have such an effect. Like what Jeff Bezos said, I worked for a retailer called Fergal Quinn, who had the Super Quinn chain of supermarkets, and it was all about customer service. And Fergal, every staff member had to wear a boomerang, a little badge of a boomerang on, and the reason was to bring the customer back. And it so worked and served Quinn so well for many years. Look, great if Paul, Julian, Brian, and Luke can rejoin us. And while you just put on your while you just log up, and while we're getting everybody ready, I just want to welcome everybody. Wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day for tomorrow. Very important day. Paul and I have had a word with the Irish government, and they've agreed that everyone on the call can be Irish tomorrow as long as you wear something green. Okay? So wear green and be like Noreen tomorrow, and you can be Irish just like Paul and me. Lucky you, eh?
Very good.
So on a more serious note, we're up on time, okay? And I don't mind at this stage if we have a chat. And people can stay with us, or they can log off as they need fit, okay? But I'm happy to go on for another 15 minutes and just have a chat, because I think there's some great points made today. And we've got some questions coming in. I just want to address a few of them, if I may. First question, if I can grab it up here, is for Julian.
Yeah, please go for it.
And it's from Christina. And Christina says, how do you integrate shopping missions in the project, addressing quick trips for small beverage for immediate consumption versus for home, as these might differ quite a lot from store to store? Did you get that, Julian?
That's a very good question, and it's actually really up-to-date question, because due to the pandemic situation, we were forced to update the project content with Coca-Cola European partners lately. So thinking about the soft drinks category, we realized it's exactly this effect, that the shoppers were more shopping for a planned purchase and requesting more the large packs in the category, whereas the immediate consumption small packs were not so high in the latest demand. So we needed to reflect that in the right shares and arrangement of products on the shelf. And yeah, thanks to the input of Coca-Cola and the software solution that we apply here, we could update the content yeah, quite fast. Of course, it is very important to have the right shelf vision, shopper insights always in place to be then translated into technical software rule set. So you can imagine a workshop like this. We are grouping up together with the team of category management at REWE and with Coca-Cola, and then gathering the aspects that are coming in from the shopper insights perspective in the latest month. And then we are updating the rule sets from time to time to reflect exactly the shifts in demand and also the new shopper focus that we are facing. And then the software can react to that and create an updated version of the planogram if we have actually updated the rule sets before.
Thanks, Julian. Paul, can you give me a little bit more detail about how you found space for this category? Because, like, you know, as we know, retail space is vital. SuperValu went with quite a punt that they're going to create a whole new category in every single one of their stores. This wasn't easy.
It wasn't, Declan, and the approach that we took was to really get a very accurate read of how all stores are configured. So the aisle length, the category adjacencies, the category spacing that made up the aisles, and this was properly CAD'd up. So we had a hard copy and a really accurate database of space. And this became the foundation for where we were then able to layer on the sales, the margin, calculate out the rate of sale, and really understand and get under the hood of how these categories were performing. Interestingly, we then layered on top the store location, the transaction count, the transaction value, and this gave us a really clear insight in what consumers were coming into the stores and how the consumers were shopping these stores. And we were then able in turn then to go back to the retailer. And it's important to know that we're a wholesale company delivering a product to a retailer that pays the mortgage, that pays all the bills on his store, and we have to protect his business and get it right first time. So we have to have proper grounded insights that clearly showed the performance of categories. In doing so, then when we adjusted and made recommendations to adjusting the category space and to accommodate this new department, we had to get it right. So it was really that approach, Declan, and it was being as meticulous as that. And to be honest, what we captured in doing the exercise, we've maintained, and it's now become well established in our business. So if any of our commercial buyers are looking for incremental space in our stores, we do reference it back and we take a similar approach to make sure that we're adjusting category space in the right areas to accommodate something new coming in. The last thing we want to do is to take out or reduce category space that's given a higher return per linear meter than what it is that we're introducing into the store. And that's really served us well, and it's become a well-established way of working within our business now since.
That was brilliant, Paul. So, you know, just to emphasize, not only did you come up with an idea, did you test it, did you believe it was right, but then your hard work really started. You had to convince the store owners to buy into it. It's not like you own the stores where you just start to focus and roll out. You've the biggest step in between: persuade, convince, ensure that the rest of the company buys into it. Look, well done, Birgit. I'm sure you can relate to both Julian and Paul's presentations because they talked about categories within the store. They really were, you know, examples of why we should look at total store optimization. I have a question here from Jorge Romero asking, great content, Birgit. Do you by any chance have any idea on how many retailers in Germany are looking into total store optimization approach? And I'll add on to that.
Yeah.
What retailers should.
Yeah. They are looking all at the total store approach, yeah, but we have only some examples or some cases where you see the implementation. So They use it, this total store approach, they use this when they open new stores and when they relaunch stores, when they close them and open them new, but they don't get over all their stores, for example. This is a monumental job to do this. The resources, the investments, and so we see a point here, a point there, a point here, a point there, but we don't see the whole implementations. We don't see total rollouts of total store approaches. But a lot of German retailers are on a very high level of the total of the category management, as you could see in Julian's presentation, and they are thinking of the next level, to realize much more potential.
What do you think, Brian and Luke? How often can retailers afford to look at total store layout versus how often should they?
Well,
because especially we just take the last year on point. We're looking at massive category shifts now. Okay, that might be pandemic related, but once we get out of the lockdown, there will be some sustained new behavior and sustained categories. Probably the time is ripe in 2022 for every retailer to now look at their category space and their macro space planning.
Well, I think the two cases that we saw illustrated something very important. I think both Paul and Julian were tackling key demand spaces. I mean, drinks are obviously a primary need. It's a primary demand space for a retailer to dive into. It's a destination category, as is the wellness part that Paul brought forward. And so it's a good starting point to say, how do I want to differentiate as a retailer? And I think every retailer will only win if in the future he's differentiated. But that connects back to the missions that connect with very important demand spaces. And that is why I think in our plead, Brian and I, we start in the journey from the consumer space where the money is, the purchase power, the segments that make 80% of your sales. And as a result, we end up where Birgit is with the total design. Because then you start from, let me free space for that category that will help me capture the mind space of that consumer group. That's exactly what kind of intuitively probably Paul and Julian did with their teams, because they shot in the big categories. And that's the starting point for all retailers if they want to succeed in the future. Is that difficult? Well, I think there's two great examples on how to do it. Talk to Julian, talk to Paul. It's the way to do it, and I think Birgit got the road paved to say these are the tactics that you have to think of when you do a store design. But I would add to that, for any retailer, start with understanding who are your 3 to 5 core segments, their demand spaces, and which categories will actually construct the consumption solutions that will make them come to me so that I can win these missions. So a retailer differentiation is which segments do I attract for which missions? And these are the growth platforms. And how to do it is what Paul did and Julian. And I think congratulations, Birgit. It's conceptually a great way to say this is where you have to think about. This is the shopper-based design. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with Luke. I've always thought that kind of a bottom-up approach is the practical way to think about this, unless it is a total new store design. Obviously, if it's a total new store design, all the 10 elements are in play, okay? But as Paul and Julian point out, when you start to look at those big consumer needs solution areas that are in tune with the current value drivers and expectations of shoppers, etc., you start from the bottom up. You say, okay, where are the biggest areas where a new solution is going to yield significant growth for us, right? And then whether it be drinks, whether it be health and wellness, as you guys point out, you then build on that from your current stores. I mean, I think the proposition of taking a current store and doing a total new store, total optimization, that's a very difficult assignment. It's very relevant for the new stores, but as Luke said, I think this whole idea of understanding where those big opportunities are to dominate certain shopper missions with certain segments that are key to your business, both from a quantitative point of view as well as a qualitative point of view, and then you go bottom up. Over time, you add more of those to a total store reconfiguration, and you change the store over time.
Very good. So let me finish by a question for all of you. And just a brief answer, if I can, and we'll go back around the houses with Julian. So let's assume that after lockdown, every retailer should be looking at their store layout, okay, because of the category shifts that have taken place, because of new shopper behavior, etc. Here's my question. How best can suppliers assist retailers with this macro space planning? Julian.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would say that it's especially important to have a long-standing cooperation that is based on trust, and maybe sometimes also more a pragmatic approach to not get lost in detail, but to focus on the right aspects of the different category worlds that we're in. As you have pointed out, it becomes very complex if you want to analyze a total store view, but if you focus on the main departments in a store of an FMCG retailer, it will become your task as a category advisor to provide them an added value by bringing in shopper insights, latest market research data, and of course, experience in handling with the different characteristics of the categories. And I think if you let them compete against each other, you must be objective and at the end of the day, look at the long-term relationship that you want to establish with the retail partner to grow together. And I think it is a very, very good example to be seen if a project is being done over years and then also executed in a lot of stores. So our ambition would be to give a recommendation to do more store optimizations, because we all know that the execution sometimes becomes a pitfall. So if we do more stores, we have a better impact on the whole universe.
Thanks, Julian. He's right, Paul, isn't he? You've got to stay close to your retailer. You've got to be providing with information and insights and start preparing for it.
No, absolutely. We heavily rely on suppliers, and now is the time, as you say, that we're, as we emerge out of this pandemic and, and life returns to normal, there has to be this greater focus on sharpening the range, really challenging the tail of ranges. Range duplication has to be considered and, tailored back. There is no space. There's no easy ride here any longer. Everything has to work hard. Everything has to provide a return for the retailer and has to provide for the consumer and the consumer shopping requirements. And as the shopping requirements have changed, and we've seen that through the centre floor categories, which would have been a bit dormant in a lot of our rural stores, as consumers gone back cooking from scratch again, and they're looking for ingredients that they're reading out of recipe books. It's so important that suppliers work with all retailers to ensure that the range that they're recommending is sharpened, and that the tailor range, the dead wood is removed. Absolutely fundamental. And the other piece that suppliers really do have to step up for is have a clear category plan that they can share with the retailer. Like, what is the role of the category? And if that's not clearly defined, the supplier works with the retailer to define that. And that ambition needs to be set out collaboratively so that the retailer and the supplier are both sharing the same objectives for the category.
Very good, Paul. Yeah, and look, that role, the definition of that role may be changing at the moment, and it obviously will change over a period of time. But we're after having 5 years worth of changes in the last 12 months. Birgit, anything to finish off just on that? The two lads, I think, have covered everything on you.
Yeah, there's nothing to add to Julian's and Paul's answer, but what we can see is in one of a question of one survey was about the collaboration in the pandemic between suppliers and retailers, and what we can see is that a lot of, not all, but a lot of the relationships got closer than they were before. Yeah, so there is collaboration, there is the ECR thinking and culture. Yeah, so I think we are in a good way.
Yeah, I'd go back, Declan, to that joint brand equity building approach. That is fundamentally a collaborative process, right? It defines what the manufacturer can bring and should bring, what the handoff is to retailers, what the retailer needs to bring to connect to that intelligence that comes from the manufacturer, in a way, and in a way that builds equity for both, right? As I think I made a point, one of the concerns I have in the last couple of years is that we seem to have moved away from the fundamental core of collaboration is where you win or lose in this whole equation. It always has been, okay? So we need to do that. And I think Birgit's right. I think the pandemic has forced collaboration to come back to top consideration. Now, a lot of that is the supply side. It reminds me of original ECR thinking. Remember ECR, the whole idea was, and the initial push was on supply. How do we get our supply chain costs lower to compete to these new competitors, et cetera? But again, it's the lesson we learned over the last 30 years. You can be absolutely fantastic at supply chain management, but if you're not focusing on the right shopper segments, the right shopper mission strategies, will it improve things? A little bit, but it's not going to be, as we say, the home run. Okay.
Very good. Luke, I don't know what you can come up with after all of that.
Not much. I'm flabbergasted by all this intelligence, I must say. But I just want to put forward the point of Paul, the role of the category. If that is clearly understood in that co-equity model, I think that's the go, and that delivers the value.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I make just a kind of a final comment here, Declan? Apart from the absolute joy that the last year has been to be part of this effort, we've only just begun. Okay, we will continue this initiative because it's obviously needed, it's welcomed, it seems to be appreciated. So we're going to continue it. The case studies that were assembled in the report really should be studied very carefully, because we have a wonderful mixture of basic and more advanced applications. And one of the questions that I've been asked on the side in this project is, okay, if I'm at the more basic level, how can I kind of take category management and begin that journey in the right way? My suggestion is take a look at the Rainbow China case. I mean, there is a fantastic example of a very basic set of the right steps in the right order, using a very simple approach to the 8 steps, leading to fantastic results. So take a look at that case study. The other one, like we looked at today, I mean, look at the level of advanced application that we hear from REWE, from Musgraves, also from Metro in Canada, that case. I mean, there are some fantastic examples of what this emerging new next level of category management looks like, and how you start to integrate these dimensions of the new category management, the category visions, the shopper missions, the co-equity development. All of these cases, there's cases in there that represent pieces of that new category management model. So we would say, for those of you that really want to think about next steps, look at the cases. Really take a look at the cases, because there's examples of basic to more advanced and in between, right? So I think, again, don't underestimate the value of that kind of study and review, because I think it'll be highly valuable to many companies, regardless of what level you're at today.
Great stuff. Thanks, Brian. And we have had some comments from Rudolph suggesting we look at CPFO, and from Antonella, who gave a brilliant presentation on online category management on our last webinar. Just querying, should we have a look at, I think it's some online scorecards. I don't want to misquote Antonella. Interactive scorecards.
That's a very good point. You know, none of the cases so far have we really focused on the e-commerce application of category management. So we do need to schedule a webinar for sure, where we highlight the several cases we have, which are fantastic, on the application of these principles in an e-commerce world. And again, I think, Declan, that'll be one of the seminars, one of the webinars that we schedule going forward. Okay?
Sure. Okay. Well, let's leave it there. For everyone online, you should be receiving a very short 2-minute survey when this webinar finishes, allowing you the chance just to rate the webinars that we've had to date, and to make any suggestions about where we should go next. To Julian and your colleagues in Hoffrogge, thanks so much for supporting this initiative, and thanks for preparing a brilliant presentation today. Paul, likewise, I know it's very, very busy at the moment, and appreciate you taking your time out. And likewise, Birgit, it was a brilliant presentation to round it all up in terms of looking at the big box planning within the footprint of a store. Brian and Luke, as always, it's been a pleasure. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody, and we shall see you all soon.
You too, man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
See you later.